Hey everybody, welcome back. My name is Elise, and this is 10 to Life, where we are talking everything true crime. So do me a favor, guys, and if you aren't familiar with this channel, first of all, check out today's video. Tell me if you appreciate the case coverage, and if you do, subscribe to the channel so that you can see more videos, because I am on a roll right now, and my goal for the whole month is to post a video a day, Monday through Friday. So if you want to see all of those and stay up to date, make sure you are subscribed and you don't miss them. Also, if you're a returning 10 to Lifer, thank you for joining me today. I'm so happy to have you, and for all of you tuning in, let me just say, this case is one that all of you have been DMing me about, tagging me in comments, sending me TikTok videos of all of these things. And so it's one that I know is on everybody's mind. It's also one that has a lot of red flags. So we're going to do something a little bit different here. And we're going to start doing this in some videos, not every video, but some. I want you guys to tell me when you identify the first red flag. So in the comments, the second you see a red flag or you hear a red flag, go to the comments, type the timestamp that you see it, and put red flag, because I'm curious to know how early on you will spot them as well. And we can do this with all my videos, but I want to start with this one for sure in particular, because oh my God, there are so many red flags. So it's one that's happening right now in real time. Nobody has the answers as to what really the truth is, but it is very, very mysterious and very twisted. So guys, let's jump right in.
10 to Life with Elise starts right now.
Okay, 10 to Lifers, I have a question for you. Do you like solving mysteries? Do you enjoy finding the red flags in murders? I mean, no need to answer that because I already know you do. And I discovered the perfect thing for you, and it is called Hunt a Killer. Hunt a Killer is a new way of gameplay, all while using your super sleuth skills, which I know you are all great at. Each box is a complete murder mystery that you have to solve. You're the detective. You get all of the evidence, and it's your job to figure out who the killer is. The stories are deeply immersive and feel extremely real, with all kinds of evidence and clues. And the items in the box are realistic, and they feel authentic, and honestly, they're pretty cool that you're actually going to want to keep them when you're done playing the game. The game goes next level and has an entire digital aspect where you can communicate with AI, email contacts, have voice leads. I mean, the works. It takes you out of just being a paper game and you interact digitally. Kind of like your own episode of like CSI combined with an escape room, combined with 10 to Life, the whole thing. You get dossiers, maps, evidence, supporting whereabouts and motivations, all to create a timeline of your own and map out the crime. And just like real crimes, as we all know, the more evidence that you can consume, the narrower your suspect list becomes. So just like real detective work, you must establish the means, the motives, and the opportunities for each suspect. Then a solution note will confirm or deny your claim. It's a great date night or game night game because you can get a complete story in just one session. I personally played with my husband for date night, and even though he isn't nearly as intrigued as I am with solving mysteries, he got way into it, ultra into it. I mean, at one point I had to calm him down a bit. He was super into it. We played Off the Record, which is about a journalist named Ashley who was reporting on two candidates who were running for mayor in Arizona, and she was digging into both of their pasts until poof, she ended up dead. So we literally didn't even take a break or stop playing until we solved it. That's how into this we were. Games are optimized for 2 to 4 players, but one person can solo it for a challenge, and groups of more than 6 can also have fun too. And there are all kinds of ways to get started. You can start it in stores, online with exclusive premium standalone games, premium multi-part cases with 15 hours of gameplay and narrative, or a subscription to a new fresh case that unfolds every 6 months. And if you choose the subscription game, subscriptions are available in 6-month prepay options, 12-month prepay options, or month-to-month. And if you don't want to subscribe, if that's not your thing, that is totally okay. You can still do one of the many all-in-one games. Games are for sale online directly at Hunt a Killer, as well as Walmart and Target. and you guys know that I'm hooking you up. So click that link in my description or use my code 10TOLIFE to get $10 off your purchase. You guys are going to love this, so make sure that you check it out. And also, as a side note, it makes such a great gift for all of your like sleuthy friends and family, and we are approaching the holiday season, so instead of just focusing on yourself, you can also focus on them too if you want. So make sure you take a look and grab that offer. You will love it. Thank you, Hunt a Killer, for sponsoring today's video. And of course, as always, thank you all you viewers for understanding that sponsors are essential to the channel if we want to grow it to a place where I can deliver you more true crime all the time. Now let's jump back into today's case. Okmulgee, Oklahoma is a small town in the central eastern region of Oklahoma, about 38 miles south of Tulsa, and it has approximately a population of 11,800 people. It's relatively rural. I hate that word, guys. Rural. I never can say it, but whatever. It's relatively rural and has a very low cost of living. And Okmulgee is kind of like the town where everybody knows each other. Everybody went to high school together. Everybody's parents went to high school together. It's just very close-knit. And it's a sleepy town comprised of a working class population where not much really happens. Crimes can occur anywhere, we know that, it's no secret, but what happened in this case and in this town and the bone-chilling details that followed would completely shake up this community. Mark Chastain is 32 years old and Billy Chastain is 30 years old. They're brothers who grew up together in Okmulgee. They were raised by their grandmother and have always been extremely close. They're friends with Mike Sparks, who's also 32, and Alex Stevens, who's 29, who also grew up in the local area. All of the men, for the most part, were also in very loving marriages and or relationships. Mark Chastain is married to Jessica Chastain, and they have 2 children together. Billy Chastain has a longtime partner with whom he shares 4 children, and her name is Megan Gordon. And Mike Sparks is engaged to Crystal Parker. Now, while most of the men's background and history were relatively easy to find, there's not a lot of personal information about Alex available. But they're all good friends, the 4 of these men, and their families are also all very close. All of the men have blue-collar-esque type jobs, and everything in their lives seemed normal for a small rural town in America. They didn't need much to be happy, and by all accounts, seemed to be living a pretty happy and peaceful life. On Sunday, October 9th, 2022, all 4 men left Billy's house on West 6th Street to go on a bike ride around 8 p.m. Now, this wasn't unusual for the men because apparently Billy had a lot of bikes and they would often go on bike rides together from time to time. But what was unusual, however, is how later that night, none of the men ever returned home. And nobody knew what could have happened to the men or where they were, nor were they answering their cell phones. And as time passed, their families became increasingly concerned, and rightfully so. Where could they possibly be? It was 4 grown men together. Surely they couldn't have gotten into too much trouble or been the target of somebody, right? So Mark's wife Jessica said that the last time she spoke to him on Sunday was around 5 p.m. But after that, she was met with radio silence. Same for Megan for Billy and Crystal for Mike, and there was no sign of Alex anywhere either. Their families continued to wonder where they could possibly be. As anyone in that situation would, they racked their brains on where they could have gone, where could they be, what could have happened. Was there some type of accident, like maybe they were all hit by a car? Did they go out drinking that night and decide not to ride home or not to come home? But then why was nobody answering their phones? What could possibly happen to 4 grown men? So not wanting to think the worst or jump to conclusions, the family waited a bit before escalating their concerns. But the red flags quickly started to pile up, and ultimately, the fact that all 4 men had been missing for almost 24 hours at this point was entirely out of character for this group. It now had been overnight Monday, October 10th, leading into Tuesday, so the families contacted the police to report Mark, Billy, and Alex as missing. Early on, investigators got a small break in the case when they discovered that Mark and Mike had left on Sunday with their cell phones in their possession. So Police Chief Joe Prentice told the media that this is the first time in his law enforcement career that 4 adult men have gone missing simultaneously, and they needed to lean a lot on this cell phone data. He also added that based on the cell phone pings, they believe that the men visited a salvage yard west of Okmulgee, then stopped at Murphy's gas station, and finally stopped at a different salvage yard near Schulter, where Mark Chastain's phone either died or was turned off. But Jessica, Mark's wife, had an app on her phone and was able to see that Mark's phone was at 28% when it was turned off. And this is concerning because this means it didn't shut off from a dead battery, and it was instead deliberately turned off. Police conducted a grid search of the salvage yard where Mark Chastain's phone was last pinged. Unfortunately, no sign of the four men or any clues were found. So at this point, everyone was confused and had many questions because the circumstances seemed incredibly odd. And it also didn't help that the police were not suspecting foul play at all. Nobody was sure what could have happened and where these men could have been. And by Wednesday, just 3 days after the men were last seen, the families were beginning to lose hope. The only clues or leads so far didn't lead to finding any of the men.
I mean, it's not a joke anymore. These guys have families at home.
Jessica Chastain and Megan Gordon don't know which way to turn, knowing their significant others, brothers Mark and Billy, disappeared.
Do you think they're alive still?
At this point, no.
Mark's wife says he parked his beloved red car in this spot before walking into this house with his buddies on Sunday.
Their buddies, Mike Sparks and Alex Stevens, were with them when Okmulgee police say they took off on bicycles Sunday night. 9 miles down Highway 75 is where Okmulgee investigators were searching for the men in a junkyard Wednesday. It's where police say Mark's cell phone pinged last.
But they don't go far. Never.
Crystal Parker's engaged to Mike.
I called him 197 times. I've texted his phone. You name it.
Investigators say there's no current reason to believe violence or foul play is a factor. But if any of their phones turn back on, police say they'll be alerted.
If they're alive, someone's holding them hostage or something, but I just don't see 4 grown men being held hostage by one person.
The stark message, they're praying the buddies here.
Baby, come home, please. Come home, please. Please come home.
So based on the evidence the families and law enforcement did have, the question was, why would all 4 men go to 2 different scrapyards? What were they trying to do? It sounds a little weird for something to do late at night on a Sunday night because remember, they didn't leave until 8 p.m. that night. So were they meeting someone? Was there an exchange or a sale of some sort planned? Also, Murphy's gas station video surveillance didn't capture the men when they stopped there. So it could have been very helpful to have that footage. We might have an idea of what had happened to them if they were there and if all 4 men were on the footage or if maybe they were with friends if that was caught on footage, but there was nothing. On Thursday, the families planned another search party at the nature preserve near the second scrapyard, and police had spent the entire previous day searching that scrapyard. They weren't ready to give up hope yet, and they just hoped that some of their prayers would soon be answered.
Loved ones' hope is starting to diminish today, but the search is far from over. No one's giving up just yet. Police spent the day gathering more tracking data, and while they were doing that, families and friends gathered here at a nature preserve near the scrapyard police searched yesterday. It's another day of questions and prayers gone unanswered.
We have so many mixed emotions. We have no answers, no closure, no nothing.
Billy Chastain's girlfriend, Megan Gordon, says hope that the men are alive is starting to slip.
It's getting hopeless. I still have hope. It's getting hopeless.
She and Jessica Chastain, Mark Chastain's wife, are out here anyways, searching for answers.
That's why I put together this search, because I want to find them. I want to find all of them. I want them, at this point, whether they're dead or alive, I want to find them.
While they planned a search party, police spent the day following up on the numerous tips they've received. So far, they've all led to dead ends. So police are turning to something more concrete. GPS data from the men's cell phones and security video from the areas the men passed through. But so far, the disappearance is a mystery.
They don't know anything. They didn't find anything of all the searches they done. That's it.
So you guys are taking it into your own hands now today?
Pretty much. I mean, just because they're searching doesn't mean we can't.
Chastain and Gordon ended their search when night fell, wrapping up yet another day without their loved ones.
We're heartbroken. We're sad. We're just, the unknown is what's getting us. Like, we need some type of closure.
On Friday, October 14th, a passerby called the police after seeing something suspicious in Deep Fork River on Friday afternoon. Police arrived and saw remains protruding from the river, and then they later held a press conference that day. Police initially said that they didn't know how many bodies were there, though hours later, they said that 4 male bodies had been removed from the water. Police also indicated the bodies would need to go to the medical examiner to confirm their identities and cause of death due to dismemberment. The discovery of the 4 bodies in the river deepened this mystery for the police. Was this in fact the 4 missing friends? Why did Mark's phone ping at the scrapyards? Was there some kind of tragic accident that led the 4 missing men into the river? And if so, who would have dismembered them? And if these aren't the bodies of the 4 missing friends, who are they? It just seems a little too coincidental that multiple sets of male bodies found wouldn't be them when they are still missing.
Mark, authorities just releasing that 4 bodies have been recovered from the river. This road has been closed since early this afternoon. The fact that it's still closed shows that there's still information authorities want to gather from the scene.
A passerby saw something that looked suspicious in the water and called dispatch.
That is what led investigators to the bridge over Deep Fork River. And once there
is definitely what appears to be body parts protruding from the water.
Still too early for positive identifications, relatives of the 4 men missing since last Sunday were informed nonetheless.
The families of Mark Chastain, Billy Chastain, Mike Sparks, and Alex Stevens have been notified of the discovery. At this time, we cannot make an identification, but out of respect, we let the families know before it was officially announced.
It's shocking.
Linda Hulse was one of dozens of area residents who discovered that the road they normally travel on was closed, since it's the same road that leads to the bridge where the bodies were found.
It's sad. You don't hear about stuff like this around here.
A heavy police presence also located near the salvage yard that the 4 men had visited. As to the conditions of the bodies, could authorities see any trauma? Were they clothed?
Everything is partially submerged and you can't see very much of it. It looks like they're clothed, but I can't confirm that.
Shock in Okmulgee, with more questions than answers. If foul play is determined, however, we asked the chief if he had a message for the perpetrator.
I'll tell him when I see him.
Over the weekend, police had to wait for an official word on if the bodies were a match. On Monday, October 17th, Okmulgee's police held a press conference to update the public on if the remains found had anything to do with the 4 missing men.
Investigators worked all weekend recovering the bodies from the river and sifting through information obtained during the missing persons portion of the investigation. Based on information obtained during the course of the investigation, we believe the men planned to commit some type of criminal act when they left the residence on West 6th Street. That belief is based on information supplied by a witness who reports they were invited to go with the men to, quote-unquote, hit a lick big enough for all of them. We do not know what they planned or where they planned to do it. Task force officers continue to investigate and will do so until all leads are exhausted. A very methodical search was conducted Saturday at the salvage yard on 20th Street as well as surrounding properties. Nothing remarkable was observed inside the salvage yard, but evidence of a violent event was discovered on an adjoining property. The owner of both salvage yards, Joe Kennedy, is considered a person of interest, but no charges have been filed. Investigators would like to speak with him again. Mr. Kennedy was reported missing Saturday night and may be suicidal. He is last believed to be driving a blue Chrysler PT Cruiser bearing Oklahoma license LSA 245. During the missing person portion of the investigation, we were very liberal with information releases in an attempt to find the men. Once the investigation changed to a murder investigation, we will be much more conservative with information to protect the integrity of the investigation.
When you say they were going to get a lick, are we talking about drugs? Are we talking about copper? Or?
We have no idea. We have no idea. That is common terminology for engaging in some type of criminal behavior, but we do not know what they were planning or where they planned to do it.
Will we get a picture of Mr. Kennedy here pretty soon? Will you send that out?
Mr. Kennedy is a person of interest that we would like to talk to and currently not a suspect. I probably won't release his photo unless and until he is named a suspect.
When is the last time y'all spoke to Mr. Kennedy?
Friday afternoon.
What are you telling the families about just kind of working this case and how you're trying to get them answers?
All of the information that I just provided you, I provided the family earlier this morning. I have assured them that nothing changes except the focus of the investigation. We have worked around the clock all week. We were out all weekend, and we will continue to work at the same pace that we've been working to try to find out exactly what happened to their loved ones and who did it.
Have you found the bicycles yet?
We have not. We still are missing the bicycles, and unfortunately, I have no description of the bicycles. At least one, and we believe all of the boys had multiple bicycles, and there's no way to know which ones they were on.
Have you recovered the weapon, the gun used in the shooting?
We have not.
Do you know what type of weapon it was? Handgun, rifle?
I'm not releasing that information.
If I see Mr. Kennedy, am I in danger? Is the community in danger with him out there?
I don't have any evidence to indicate that Mr. Kennedy is a threat to anyone else, but I would use caution. If anyone sees Mr. Kennedy, please call the local authorities.
Can you tell us what evidence was recovered at the second salvage yard or property nearby?
We're not releasing that yet.
Have you ever in your tenure had something like this before?
I've worked over 80 murders in my career. I have worked murders involving multiple victims. I have worked dismemberments. But this case involves the highest number of victims, and it's a very violent event. So I can't say that I've never worked anything like it, but it's right up there at the top.
So reason to believe that the victims were placed in the river on Sunday evening?
I don't know that I can give you a firm answer. It would take a considerable amount of time to put the bodies in the condition that they were and then dump them in the river. So my best estimate would be late Sunday night, early Monday morning.
When you said on CNN over the weekend the bodies have appeared to be in the water for a while, did the water do anything to the condition of these bodies to make your investigation harder? Is that what you said?
Water always affects decomposition. And depending on temperature, depending on the current flow, there's a lot of different factors that do that. And I would defer to forensic pathologists to better explain that than I. Whenever water is involved, it makes it much more difficult to identify evidence. And we are methodical at every scene, but we have to be extra methodical when we're dealing with a body of water because it's so easy to miss evidence.
When you last spoke with Mr. Kennedy, was he cooperative? What was his state of mind like?
He appeared to be cooperative. He was not antagonistic.
Is that property where the event happened, is that his property as well, or just the salvage yard?
No, it is not his property. That property belongs to the property surrounding the salvage yard, and maybe for ease, I have since discovered that Mr. Kennedy referred to the South 75 location as the salvage yard and the 20th Street location as the scrap yard, which may make it easier to keep track of what we're talking about. So the scrap yard belonged to Mr. Kennedy. The property surrounding the scrap yard belongs to 3 different businesses.
And that property you're talking about is the one where the violent event
That's correct. It was on one of the other pieces of property.
Did these men have a relationship with Mr. Kennedy before? Were they employees? Are they relatives of any kind?
Not that I'm aware of. Mr. Kennedy has denied knowing them, and obviously I can't ask the victims, but I don't have any reason to believe that there was any pre-existing relationship.
With them being cut up into pieces, is there a chance somebody's going to find something down the creek or something like that, or do you believe you have recovered everything?
I believe this morning we recovered the last piece. We recovered the majority of the remains Friday night. We made an additional recovery yesterday, and we recovered what I believe is the last piece this morning.
Were the bodies tied down to weight them down in the river, or were they just kind of falling free?
I didn't see any evidence that there was an attempt to weight them down.
Now, with 4 men and 1 person of interest, do you think he may have, whoever did this, may have been alone or received help?
Whenever I conduct an investigation, I always develop theories, but I don't publicize those until I have evidence to support them. At this point, I don't have any evidence of anyone else being involved.
Have you spoken with the family members before you met with us, and how are they doing?
I did speak with the family members. They were upset. I think that they had already resolved themselves that this was their loved ones, but the additional information about dismemberment was obviously a shock, and they were very distraught.
What's next?
A lot of work. We were still waiting on cellular telephone records. We have requested additional video surveillance from businesses in the area. We'd like to talk to Mr. Kennedy again. We continue to get tips of sightings. But as information comes in of people that potentially know things, we're going out and talking to them. So we still have a lot of leads to follow, and we will continue to bring those in, prioritize them, and send those out to investigators to be accomplished and then report back. And at some point, we have to pause and prep reports. We have been working so fast, and this investigation has been rolling on so fast, we haven't had time to type any reports. We have a lot of typing to do.
So let me ask you, with all the media in the room, how do you want us to proceed?
Anyone that has any information about the murder, or the disposal of the bodies after the murder, or Mr. Kennedy's location, is asked to contact Okmulgee Police or their local authorities. We can be contacted at 918-756-3511, or we have set up a tips email at tips@okmcity.net. All right, thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now let's go through the big revelations. First off, each victim suffered gunshot wounds, but the actual causes of death are still pending because all 4 bodies were dismembered and then scattered into the river. And this is just so sick and twisted, and unfortunately does account for why police had to wait all weekend to get that confirmation on their identities from the medical examiner. Second, investigators also said that the 4 men were up to something nefarious that Sunday evening. A witness apparently told police that the plan was to hit a lick big enough for all of them. Now, I didn't know what hit a lick means, I'm going to be honest with you, but according to Urban Dictionary, to hit a lick means that you are going to or have already gained money or something worth money or value, most likely illegally or stealing. Third, police also discovered evidence of a violent event on an adjoining property of one of the 2 salvage yards that Mark's phone pinged at, and both of those were owned by a man named Joe Kennedy, who is now a person of interest. Joe does not own the property where a violent event is suspected to have occurred, though. Instead, that property belongs to 3 different nearby businesses. And the 4th big revelation is, as of Saturday, Joe is now a missing person as well, although police had last spoken to him that Friday afternoon. So did he flee, or was somebody else responsible for him missing? Police said that Joe was overall cooperative, but other than that, Joe denied knowing any of the men. Police also had no reason to believe that there was some type of friendship or pre-existing relationship between them. For some reason, which has not yet been disclosed, police did, however, believe that Joe was at risk for taking his own life. So they didn't know where he was at this point, but they did give a vehicle description for him, a blue PT Cruiser with Oklahoma plates. In an interesting twist, apparently Joe Kennedy is currently on a 10-year deferred sentence in Okmulgee County, Records show that he was convicted in 2013 of assault and battery with a dangerous weapon. The details of this case on the record are not public, though. Still, allegedly, the assault and battery charges were for shooting at 6 men who broke into his salvage yard. Joe did hit one of the men, but luckily he survived. And this incident occurred in 2012. How coincidental is that? I couldn't come up with a more damning previous charge than that, even if I tried, guys. An attack on a group of multiple men with a gun, I mean, it sounds oddly familiar, right? And I know at this point he's just a person of interest in this homicide investigation of the 4 friends, but this really isn't looking good for Joe. So I have a lot of questions, and I fully do appreciate treating everyone innocent until proven guilty, especially when someone is just a person of interest. But still, I would be amiss if I didn't elaborate on how guilty this makes Joe look. What could have possibly happened that night? Did Joe catch the 4 men trespassing and burglarizing one of his properties and choose to shoot them? It's also possible that Joe felt like he was under attack or in fear for his life. So could this be an act of self-defense? But if that were the case, why not call the police afterward? Surely something like that would be justifiable. However, the facts of this case just don't support that theory. So did he shoot them and then choose to dismember them because he knew if he was caught, his 10-year deferred sentence would come back to haunt him and he would probably go away for life? Dismembering 4 humans isn't something people just do out of nowhere. And not to get too graphic here, but to dismember 4 different humans would take a significant amount of time and be an absolutely horrific scene. It also takes an incredible amount of strength. Plenty of people have been in situations where maybe they had to shoot somebody in self-defense or defend their property, and they didn't just go and dismember people afterwards. But you know what? It sounds like this was not the first time the 4 men may have been involved in hitting a lick, so to speak, because that was a pretty nonchalant witness statement, especially the part where the payday would be big enough for all of them. But what could they transport on bicycles that would be so valuable from a scrapyard? There is some speculation online that the men may have been wanting to steal catalytic converters from cars, but there's no way to verify that unless the original witness speaks up, which I highly doubt he will. But I also found this article. And this is from a theft back in 2021. And the suspect does look similar to one of the Chastain brothers. So maybe Joe knew that someone or a group of people was stealing from his salvage yards. Perhaps he snapped because he was so tired of people taking advantage of him. Still, it doesn't mean it's okay to shoot people, but let's just play this out for a second here, guys. Snapping in a moment of anger is one thing, but the dismemberment part isn't exactly a spur-of-the-moment decision, if you will. You would have to have a lot of time to think about your actions very clearly, see what you're doing, and also have the opportunity to stop at any point in between. But that never happened here. You would also have to have the tools necessary to complete the act of dismemberment, and either have such strong tools or multiple tools that they don't dull after dismembering one body, but enough strength to get through 4. So I have a hard time believing anyone sane would kill 4 people, dismember them, then dump them in a river where they could easily be found. Perhaps he thought the body parts would be carried away by the river or something, I don't know. These were the acts of somebody very twisted, and it's hard to believe that this would be his first time doing something like this. And to make things worse for himself at this point, Joe was still missing and maybe on the run. So to me, these actions seem like they are coming from a person who knew what they were doing and what they were doing was wrong. So about an hour after the press conference on Monday, Okmulgee's police department released another update. In a statement published on Facebook, police said Joe Kennedy's blue PT Cruiser had been located and was in police custody. They found the vehicle abandoned behind a business in Morris, Oklahoma, which is just about 10 minutes away from Okmulgee, so it doesn't seem like Joe went that far. Police added that they didn't know where Joe was currently at that moment, though. And after that PT Cruiser was found, they didn't have any additional vehicle information for him. So police continued to search for Joe, and the community would have to be on pins and needles until more news was announced. On Tuesday, October 18th, news broke that Joe Kennedy was finally captured in Florida. Joe Kennedy was arrested late Monday in Daytona Beach Shores, Florida, concerning a stolen vehicle out of Okmulgee County. In another police statement published on Facebook, a warrant has been issued for his arrest in Okmulgee County on case number CF 2012-28 for an application to accelerate a judgment and sentence he received in relation to a shooting in 2012. That's that deferred sentence in which he had a 10-year probationary period that I mentioned earlier. So the bond for that warrant is $500,000. Police added that the DA and sheriff are working on extraditing Joe back to Okmulgee. So let's pause here for a second, because Daytona Beach Shores, Florida is extremely far from Okmulgee, Oklahoma, 1,200 miles far, an 18-hour-mile drive far. According to the Volusia County Jail records, Joe was booked at 10:18 p.m. Eastern Time. We don't know when he was pulled over or arrested, but for the sake of the example here, let's just say he was arrested 2 hours before, so around 8 p.m. Eastern. To be in Daytona Beach Shores on Monday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern, you would need to leave Okmulgee by 1 a.m. Central on Monday, or just past midnight on Sunday. That example would be just driving straight through. No stops, no sleeping, no bathroom breaks, nothing. We know that Joe had been missing since Saturday, so the timing makes sense for him to have been long gone and on his way to Florida that day. But does this make him guilty? Because to be fair, on Saturday, Joe hadn't been named a person of interest or anything like that. So maybe he left because he had business in Daytona Beach Shores, or maybe he just happened to be there, or maybe he knew that he was about to be identified as a person of interest, so he made the choice to flee and not wait around. With the stolen vehicle charge on top of everything else and the eerily similar charges from 2012, I don't know. It's not looking so good for good old Joe here. At the end of the Facebook post, police said that the murder investigation is still ongoing and investigators are following leads daily. So is Joe responsible for the violent and brutal deaths of Billy Chastain, Mark Chastain, Mike Sparks, and Alex Stevens? In the spirit of playing both sides here, maybe Joe was supposed to be in Daytona Beach Shores all along, and maybe he wasn't running, although that doesn't really explain the stolen vehicle. But if Joe is not responsible for the deaths of the four men, who is? Is there still somebody dangerous still lurking around the Okmulgee area? The families of the four men deserve answers and closure for the sudden and harrowing loss of their loved ones. A GoFundMe has also been set up for Mark and Jessica's family by their grandmother, and it reads, "As most may know, this has been a heartbreaking tragedy. My grandsons, whom I raised, went missing Sunday, and their remains were recovered from the Deep Fork River Friday. For those of you who know, Mark Anthony and Billy Jack Chastain are the definition of brothers and were always together. And for that, it only makes sense to have all of this together. Mark leaves behind his wife Jessica and his 2 children, and Billy leaves behind his life partner Megan and their 4 children. The families are in great need of prayer and support right now. With the cost of the funeral expenses and living expenses at this time, any and every donation will help and will be given to pay these expenses. Thank you all so much for your continued prayers and support during this difficult time. This will be the only GoFundMe page that will be set up as a family for Mark and Billy Chastain." So this case is still a developing story, and I will definitely be following up on this one because, as we know, Joe is still a person of interest but has not yet been charged. So what I want from you guys, comment below and let me know if you think Joe is responsible or if you think that somebody else is. Also, what do you think the 4 men were doing there that night? Were they there to steal something? Were they there to meet up? And how did this end so badly? I'll keep you guys updated, of course, but as always, it's easier to follow me on Instagram, which is @_AnnieElise, to get quicker updates on these cases because I can't always jump right onto YouTube and record and post a video with the updates. So if you want to stay in the know of all cases, not just this one, make sure you head over to Instagram and follow there so I can update you in my stories. But I'm curious to know what you guys think about this one, so please comment below. Is Joe responsible for this? What was the motive? What were the men doing there? And was this Joe's first time dismembering somebody? Because that takes a lot of planning, a lot of strength, and, a lot, I hate to use the word skill, but kind of a lot of skill. So let me know what you guys think below. Thanks again for tuning in with me today, guys. I hope you appreciated the case coverage. Again, like this video on your way out. It takes you 1 second to do so and is a free way to support the channel, and subscribe if you haven't done so already so that you can see all of the new videos that I am posting every single day. All right, guys, thanks again, and until the next one, stay safe.